The National Education Association issuing a plea to the National Governors Association to get teachers vaccinated immediately. In a letter, the NEA writes, "We want educators to be back in school buildings with our students, but we must do so safely. And the only way to do that is to fully implement the strategies identified by the CDC, including prioritizing educators for vaccination." Joining us right now is Becky Pringle. She is the president of the National Education Association and one of the authors of that letter. We should note that the NEA is the largest labor union in the United States, representing 3 million people. Becky, what's the response that you've gotten from governors so far?
Good morning, Becky. It's good to be with you this morning. We issued that letter because at this point, we have about 23 states that have not yet prioritize vaccination for educators. And we know, I can tell you, Becky, as a science teacher for over 30 years, that educators all over this country want nothing more than to be back in person with their students. But we've been saying the same thing for 11 months, and that is that we have to do that safely, and we have to pay attention to issues of equity. We know that many of our schools have not had the resources to actually put in place the guidelines that the CDC says are necessary. Becky, I bet you could say them with me. Masking, social distancing, testing and tracing, making sure that we have the supplies and the people to be able to do that continuous disinfecting of the surfaces in our schools. We have to make sure that we have the resources to do that. And we know the vaccine will provide that additional layer of safety so that we can get our students and educators back into our buildings as quickly as we can.
Yeah, Becky, I have an enormous amount of respect for teachers. Our teachers right now in our public school here in town are there for half-day sessions. They have been through the entirety of this, started back in September. So I've been really impressed and amazed by how well they have done things. I've been frustrated with our governor, too, for allowing smokers to get priority over teachers, which I thought was wrong. But having said that, how quickly can you get these teachers back, and especially when we know there are so many teachers who are back and have been back for months and months at this point? What do you say to the families who say, I can't do this anymore, I have to get my kids back in school, they're missing out too much by not being there?
Becky, you just shared something that a lot of people don't know, and that is that most of our educators are back in classrooms in person with their students. But those districts are working very closely with educators and parents, infectious disease experts, to make sure that they have the resources to protect our students and protect our educators and protect our families as well. We know that far too many of our schools don't have those resources, and we know which ones they are. Those are the students who have forever been marginalized in our society. We know that our Black and Brown and Indigenous students, we know that our students living in poverty, our special needs students, all of them have been in a place throughout this pandemic that they're not only impacted by the pandemic, Becky, you know that, but by all of the crises that it spawned. And so we are working hard with governors and other policymakers to make sure we have the resources that we must have to bring our students back to school, all of them. And not just that, Becky, we have to keep them in school. We saw the chaos throughout the fall with them going in and out. And so that's why it's absolutely important that we do that. And we believe that prioritizing educators for vaccinations is an important step in that process.
What states are giving you the most pushback? Just in terms of trying to get teachers to the front of the line?
We see states that you've seen this throughout the fall that did not necessarily believe that we had a pandemic, that we were in the middle of a pandemic, that we're not following the science. The same is playing out with the vaccines. We also know, and you know, Becky, we actually did a survey of our educators, and one of the things they told us, first of all, 70% said that they would feel safer being back in school in person with their students or staying there. To your point, many of them are already there if they had the vaccination. But what they told us was there's so much chaos and confusion around getting vaccines. We've had reports where some states who have not made that decision to prioritize them have sent out notifications, and then teachers arrive and there are no vaccine doses available for them. So there's a lot of chaos and confusion. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to call. We're trying to work with governors and with healthcare professionals to try to fix that. But that is an issue that must be addressed right away.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.